So when I got up this morning, I had no intentions of talking about Viktor Orban. I talked about him in my three big stories about what happened yesterday, and I was like, okay, I can move on with life. But now I have to talk about him because I have to explain what he did yesterday and what he did today. Well, yesterday and today are relative. He's a few hours ahead of me. So let's first watch the day before or just before the EU gets together to talk about things and what he said going into the meeting. Let's do that to set the table and see what then we'll talk about what happened and then what happened again. And so this is kind of a like if I was scripting this, I would never have thought thought, no, that's too weird. Let's not put that in the script. But weird things happen.
Why we are here is not to make business. It's not about bargain. It's not about deal. We represent approaches and principles. So to give money to Ukraine is easy to do because in short term the money for Ukraine is already in the budget. So there is no any extra decision to give it in short term. In long term and the bigger sum of money, my position is that we should give it outside. But we are not under the pressure of the time because the bridge.
Okay, so from what he's saying so far, it seems like, in the short term, money's not an issue because it's already a dealt with thing. So he seems to be signaling he's not going to interfere with that.
Bridging solution is already in the budget. Enlargement is not a theoretical issue. Enlargement is a merit-based, legally detailed process, which has preconditions. We have set up 7 preconditions, and even by the evaluation of the Commission, 3 out of the 7 is not fulfilled. So there is no reason to negotiate membership of Ukraine now. Even not to
So he seems to be saying, yeah, money, okay, it's already kind of baked in, but joining the EU, that's not going to happen. Yeah. But then what actually happened was almost the opposite. So let's go to the first article here, and this was EU sidesteps Viktor Orban to open membership talks with Ukraine. Now, this was yesterday. The EU has decided to open membership negotiations with Ukraine in an unexpected move that will be a critical boost to Volodymyr Zelensky and deal a blow to Vladimir Putin. The announcement made on Thursday after 8 hours of negotiations in Brussels came despite the opposition of Hungary, whose Prime Minister Viktor Orbán had for weeks said it would veto opening accession talks. In the end, diplomats said Orbán left the room when key decisions, which had to be unanimous, was made by leaders of 26 other states. So Orbán has these 8 hours of negotiation, and then he leaves the room. Now, there was a funny tweet or funny picture on Twitter. Estonia's prime minister adds a laxative to Orban's wine so that they can vote without him again. But that's not exactly what happened. I mean, it's a ha ha ha, but that's not it. Sources said the decision of Orban not to be in the room was agreed beforehand. He knew that 26 member states were strongly in favor. Of course, it's legal. Now, remember, you have to have unanimity to join the union, the European Union. So now there's a reason for that. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing simultaneously. Let's just talk philosophically for a moment. You have in the United States, for example, a majority is, who gets what vote, 50% plus 1. That means 50% plus 1, you're now the next, I don't know, Republican or Democrat congressman. 50% plus 1, you get your law made. So that's the majority. That means the majority has the control. When you move to a supermajority, you only do it for a few reasons that are really important. Like, we don't amend the Constitution with just a simple majority. We amend it with a supermajority. Now, you can have a supermajority of, 2/3 or 3/4 or whatever. It just depends on what the issue is. But whatever the supermajority is, it's because you feel like, hey, we want to really make sure that this is something that everybody favors when you have a supermajority. Now, that also means the minority actually controls the actions. They can veto the supermajority. They can veto the majority, a simple majority, if they can't meet the threshold of a supermajority, if that makes sense. Okay? Now, when you have to have unanimity, that means that any one person can override the will of the other. So in this case, 26 member states, and he's the 27th. He can override the will of the other 26 members. So that's how that works. So do you really want one person being able to tell them what to do? Well, in that, if it's important enough, do you really want to be overridden and have another state join, like a Greece and Turkey kind of scenario, right? Do you really want those people that we hate over there to be able to join without your approval? Well, okay, I mean, I understand that. So there's upsides and downsides to a supermajority or unanimity, uh, which is why simple majority is the way that you generally go. Okay, so that being said, let's get on with this. Volodymyr Zelensky was very happy about this decision yesterday, and there's a little bit more. Speaking in a video on social media, Orbán said he had not voted as he did not want to take part in what he thought was a completely senseless and irrational and incorrect decision. So he's saying, after 8 hours of negotiation, I walked out of the room because it wasn't even like I wasn't going to change their minds and I wasn't going to be part of it. Okay, and so then he can still save face. Now, perhaps there was some backroom deal. It turns out that the European Union was working to release some money for Orban, whatever. Okay, well, we don't know that it's tied to that. What I read in other places was these other deals. Just the timing just happens to be, but so who knows what's actually happening there? I'm not going to speculate. Okay, so next I want to show you this. Then Zelensky's introduced and added to the picture. Watch Orbán in this picture. This is the moment Hungary's Viktor Orbán fails to clap as Zelensky joins the EU family photo.
How are you?
There's Orbán. Should put him right next to Zelensky. That would have been fun. But okay, so look, I'm not gonna pick fights with this. Like, if he wants to have sour grapes and doesn't want to clap for him, it's not really that classy. But walking out of the room and allowing that to happen was far more important than not clapping in a photo. Okay, but then something even weirder happened. So Hungary then, after that, after allowing Ukraine in, then blocked $50 billion of EU funding for Ukraine, which was just kind of strange. Like and if I have to choose between the funding or the allowing them to begin their accession talks, like opening that, I would choose the opening the accession talks. That's far more important than the funding. You can work around the funding. Okay, so here are the things that you need to know here. The veto for the extra money to Ukraine. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán said after Thursday's talks, Ukraine is critically dependent on the EU and US for funding as it continues to fight Russia occupying forces. Hungary, which maintains close ties with Russia, has long opposed membership for Ukraine but didn't veto that move, which was kind of strange. He told Hungarian state radio on Friday that he had fought for 8 hours to stop his EU partners, but could not convince them. Ukraine's path to EU membership would be a long process anyway, he added, adding that the parliament in Budapest could still stop it happening if it wanted to. Now, that line struck me as really interesting. I was thinking about this morning, and it's interesting. So you have this unanimity as this very high bar, but the unanimity is also a function of timing. Like, think about just where we were 4 years ago at any point in U.S. history, and you could have a different president. So that and a different president and different Congress coming into a treaty, for example, we like so if you have Biden as let's just use presidents because that's a little easier. If you have Biden in charge, that might be a different scenario than if you have Trump in charge, which is a different scenario than if you had Obama in charge, and so on and so forth. So yes, unanimity is a high bar, but it could just be a function of timing getting that right. Like, there could be a time Orban's not elected and somebody else who's much more sympathetic is, and then the EU could vote and no problem. But okay, it is what it is. This is where we are. Okay, commenting on Mr. Orban's opposition to the aid, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte said that we still have some time. Ukraine's not out of money in the next few weeks, and he's not. They're not. Zelensky said that we're not going to run out of money right away. It doesn't matter if it's December or January or February. The issue is morality. I don't know if he meant morale, like high morale, or morality of it's immoral to not back when Russia is invading and we're defending freedom in the world. Either way, the issue is not that they're going to run out of money right away. We will revert this matter early next year and we'll try to get unanimity. In the meantime, other countries like the Germans have been stepping up and a number of different nations. So they have something in the short term. So don't lose sleep over that. But we'll get to it. And in the U.S., we'll get to it. I'm pretty confident that they're going to strike some kind of deal, but they have to work through their political machinations in the process. Okay, so that's what's going on there. Now, here, this article, this was 2 days ago, said EU budget chief sees deal on 50 billion euros for Ukraine has a plan B. So they're going to need to go to a plan B. He didn't say what the plan B was, but he said it. European Union leaders are likely to reach a deal on 50 billion euros, $54 billion dollars, for Ukraine this week because it's coming packaged with cash that Hungary, which threatened to block it, will benefit from. Okay, so the story even got weirder because what happened was that they allowed the accession of Ukraine and then they vetoed a package where they were going to benefit financially from if they just allowed it to go forward. Okay, that's strange. The EU wants to revise its budget until 2027 to add 33 billion euros in loans, 17 billion in grants for Kyiv so that Ukraine, which is fighting off Russia's invasion, has certainty of financing to keep the state running. Hungary, whose Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has touted his ties with Moscow, has questioned the amount and placement in the EU budget, on which all 27 EU governments, including Budapest, must unanimously agree. So now when you get to the end of the article, they said this about a plan B. One of the qualities of the commission is to always have a plan B. But honestly, I don't want to speak about that and speculate about plan Bs because it also creates an exit opportunity. I get that, but they're going to have to create a plan B because, you know, Orbán is just chummy with Putin. This was 2 months ago, and it created a big uproar when, he was taking his photo and having talks with Putin and that kind of thing. So they're going to have to go to some other mechanism. Now, this is a chart of the countries committing the most aid to Ukraine. Here's the European Union as the European Union, right? 84.9, and here's the United States in 71. It's actually like 75 in bilateral aid, and then now it's actually totally like 110, 113, depending on how you calculate it, in total aid, not just bilateral aid, based on what's happened in Ukraine. And then you have Germany and Great Britain and Norway and Japan and Canada and so on and so forth. Okay. So what they could do is instead of putting that money here, they would just, okay, you do your part, you do your part, you do your part, your part, your part, your part, etc. And that's one way of working around that. So it's not devastating. If they have to do it that way and work out some kind of side deal. But the money will get there. I'm not worried about that at all. But Orban, he's just a piece of work. Like if I was Putin, I'd be very happy to be seeing Orban. I'd be buying him flowers because he can be the fly in the ointment that can really be destructive for European unanimity, and he's showing that he's been willing to do that. Why he walked out of the first meeting and allowed that to happen, I just don't quite understand. But he can still be the problem. And there was an article that I read that said like he was happy to be there and have all this attention because it was all about him and all the discussion, all the the Germans and everybody else was coming to see him and to lobby him. And he liked that, almost like he was a Kardashian or some kind of celebrity that's, I don't know why you're a celebrity or a reality TV show kind of person, that kind of thing. So, but I don't think that's quite fair. I think he has legitimate interests, uh, but that are at cross purposes with Ukraine, and they can iron them out, but they haven't yet. So maybe I'm just being too kind to him, but I think that they could work it out. But again, he's looking to the day when on the other side of this, what's happened with Ukraine is over and he can wheel and deal with Russia again. And in the meantime, Putin and Orban are happy to be chummy. All right, that's where we are right now. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening to me. Thank you for the likes and the shares and subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.